a child groomed and raped while in care. She'd be 32 this year. She's been dead longer than she lived.
She's died, and they will let it go. They will let it go. They're not sorry. They know what happened. How can they be sorry? No, they're not sorry. No, not really. The whole system needs to be changed.
Since her granddaughter's death, Joan has refused to accept the official version. And she's right. Those meant to protect her granddaughter did know what was happening. They knew Victoria was being raped. They knew other girls in care were being raped too. But the investigation triggered by Victoria's death was closed down, its resources pulled, so the abuse carried on. Today, with the police whistleblower who exposed the failings next to her, the new official version was revealed.
Our report has established that most of the children we considered were failed by Greater Manchester Police and Manchester City Council. The authorities knew that many were being subjected to the most profound abuse and exploitation, but did not protect them. This is a depressingly familiar picture seen in many other towns and cities across the country.
Many other places and thousands more children. For years, the girls were dismissed as troublemakers. Social workers and police who spoke out were ignored. The investigation in Manchester was one of the first. Officers identified dozens of victims and close to 100 potential suspects. But then it was stopped when senior officers decided to pull all its resources.
This wasn't a mistake by senior police officers. This was a deliberate closing down of a live investigation because for whatever reason they couldn't be bothered. They left those kids to their own devices. They let the men continue to abuse children. They will not have stopped. For me, there should be accountability now.
Maggie's the only person here today who's used the word cover-up. Do any of the rest of you think this is a cover-up?
When I heard Maggie say that this had been abruptly closed, I wanted to know the reason why. And that's what I asked Malcolm and Gary to find. What was the reason for this being terminated so abruptly? And the records say it was a question of resources.
Tonight there are calls for a new inquest into Victoria Agolia's death. The original verdict said there was no suggestion it should have been foreseen, even though her support workers knew a man had been injecting her with heroin. While police say there's now a new investigation.
I want to apologise to all of those vulnerable children who were let down in 2004 when Greater Manchester Police did not thoroughly investigate the abhorrent offences that had been committed against them. I want to say that I'm personally disgusted that these children were not cared for and the awful abuse they suffered. I'm committed to doing all that we can to ensure that they receive the justice today that they were denied 15 years ago.
She was only a child. She lost her mother. It was her only fault. It was wrong. Everybody's been wrong. And I loved her.
Well, today, Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, said that this case should have been a wake-up call, but instead the investigation was closed abruptly, and that was wrong. The report published today does not name the police officers said to have been involved in making that decision, but this evening Channel 4 News can reveal that one of those senior police officers was Dave Thompson, who is now the Chief Constable of West Midlands Police, one of the biggest police forces in the country. He has confirmed that to us this evening, but he is also distancing himself from the decision-making. In a statement, he says that he was a district commander with Greater Manchester Police at the time and not in charge of criminal investigations. He said he was never involved in the Operation Augusta investigation. He says that he acknowledges the report does identify him as having been at a meeting and having made the decision about resources, but he says that it wouldn't have been for a police officer of his role to make that kind of decision. He goes on to say that he would not have made that decision with that kind of investigation, but he also apologises because he was working for Greater Manchester Police at that point in time for failings within the investigation. So Dave Thompson, Chief Constable of West Midlands Police, confirming to us this evening that he was involved in the report that was published today highlighting failings in this case.
A big interview. Joining us now is Maggie Oliver, a former detective constable with Greater Manchester Police, who became a prominent whistleblower after exposing her own forces' failure to properly investigate the Rochdale grooming gang scandal. Maggie resigned from the police in protest and has since become a tireless advocate for the survivors of sexual abuse, and of course has founded the Maggie Oliver Foundation to support victims and campaign for change. Maggie, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure to have you. Of course, your words are splashed all over the Daily Mail today. You claim Keir Starmer is as guilty as anybody. And I know our audience really want to know from your perspective, how have you come to that conclusion?
Hello, Alex, and thank you for inviting me on the show. Let me say, first of all, I didn't expect that to be on the front page of the Daily Mail. It was something that I said on my Twitter. But I do stand by every word. This topic has haunted me for really 20 years now, since I first worked on Operation Augusta. Now, in 2000, I was very naive back then, but in 2005, Greater Manchester Police closed down a live investigation where we had 100 paedophiles on a database that we knew would abusing dozens of children. My husband was terminally ill and I went off work, leaving a fully, all singing, all dancing, live major investigation. And when I came back to work after he died, the whole job had been closed down. Not one person prosecuted, and it left me traumatized. But I was very, very naive in that back then. I am not naive now. I've had 20 years of learning. But in 2008, I know that when Keir Starmer was the Director of Public Prosecutions, Gordon Brown was the Prime Minister, and a circular was sent out to all Crown prosecutors and police forces, telling them that this was a well-known problem amongst the Pakistani Muslim community, that young white children were being groomed or and raped on a daily basis, and that they should do nothing about it. So if the and yet we're talking about 11, 12, 13-year-old white vulnerable children, often from difficult backgrounds, and the law in our country says you cannot have sex with a 12-year-old child. And if the Director of Public Prosecutions is instructing police forces and Crown prosecutors not to prosecute, I say there is no higher authority in the land. He should be leading by example. And we don't cherry pick which rapists we prosecute. You know, I don't care where an abuser comes from. It just so happens that this kind of abuse has landed on my doorstep. But I don't care if it's a priest in the church, if it's the Church of England, if it's Jeffrey Epstein, Harvey Weinstein. I honestly do not care who that abuser is. The law should be equal. So I now see the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, saying that, turning away again. I'm not saying he is the only one, Alex. We have had a whole army of public figures who have failed in their public duty to prosecute child abusers. And that is a fact. And I don't, using a fear of racial tension as a reason not to prosecute is not good enough. We have thousands and thousands of children, many of whom we are supporting in my charity, the Maggie Oliver Foundation, who have fought for 20 years to have their abusers prosecuted. We, as a country, need to get a grip of this and do something properly about it to stop it. And the responsibility and the blame, Alex, does not lie with those children. It lies with the perpetrators. And our focus as a civilized society is to address that abuse. So that's why I've said what I've said.